Before we begin today's video, I just want to thank you guys for watching and subscribing. All those out here who are helping me grow this channel out and enjoying the stories. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thanks guys. And please enjoy as we get into the next part of Imperialdramon's story. And I just want to say one more time, thank you. It is a mystery how the two Digimon came to fuse together, and whether this Omegamon is also due to someone's powerful will or a fusion that exists solely due to some sort of wish is unclear. After claiming the network key of the Monarch Knights, the Dark Forces reassembled, as their generals were having a meeting of where the next network key would be. However, they would be interrupted. As a rift would open in the sky, something was felt, a pressure that hadn't been seen in the digital world for some time, and all of the Dark Generals had to take notice, as something emerged from the void, and it was Omegamon Alter S. As Omegamon Alter S entered the area, it was surprised, seeing the enemies that had been condemned, as it would speak to all of them, addressing them, as it would say, that for the digital world, in the honor of Yggdrasil, you have been condemned. And before anything else, it would prepare to dispatch them. As little did we know, through the viewing glass, Yggdrasil would be watching, as although Omegamon Alter S is not its favorite, it would be happy if it could do the job as well. Showing off its strength, it immediately darted in to confront Grey Knightsmon and Chaos Gallantmon. Using its crest sword and even the blitz cannon, it was easily able to dispatch both and handle both at the same time. Shockingly, it would immediately realize that Grey Knightsmon was the weakest, so it decided to deal with it first, as taking a swipe with the crest sword was more than enough to deal the damage to dispatch it, as Grey Knightsmon quite literally split in half, as both Dark Knightmon and Metal Greymon went flying out into the distance. Seeing that there was an opening, Imperialdramon decided this was the best time to start a combat against Omegamon Alter S. As both sides furiously clashed, it became clear that they were evenly matched to an extent. As both decided to ramp this fight to its max, both began to charge their cannons, as Imperialdramon prepared its legendary Giga Death, and Alter S prepared its Blitz Cannon for a massive blast. As both aimed at each other and decided to fire, a massive explosion was heard, as it crossed the area, even affecting the ground, as almost a miniature earthquake was felt. However, as the smoke plumes lingered on the battlefield, a shocking surprise was Alter S deciding to dart through the smoke, seizing its opportunity. And as it appeared right in front of Imperialdramon, it said "Checkmate." As the crest sword was used once again, and a direct hit was dealt to Imperialdramon at point-blank range. Shockingly, Imperialdramon had crashed into the ground and was very damaged. As before, the similar cracks that had happened before in its battle against Magnamon and Rapidmon showed, more cracks began to form, as for some reason it seemed like it was a shell. As slowly Alter S appeared in front of it, as it asked it if there were any last words. However, to their surprise, instead of saying something witty, it roared to Chaos Gallantmon to unleash ruin. In the distance, Chaos Gallantmon, who had retreated from the battle, had already received its weapon that it needed and decided to call it to the battlefield, using its shield Gorgon to control the now under the mind control of the others, Shine Greymon. As it tasked it to go into the battlefield, Shine Greymon would face off and charge in against Alter S. Little did Alter S know that this was not a battle of normal circumstances, as when both clashed, it was shocked, as it could tell that Shine Greymon wasn't innately evil, as something was going on. However, when Shine Greymon told Alter S to help him with "Help Me," it was more confused, as it thought that this was a soldier. However, to everyone's surprise, Imperialdramon used its wrist, as on its wrist carried an electric, some type of controller. As it began to reverberate, ShineGreymon began to be electrocuted. As Imperialdramon would scream that, "You obey me." And as this continued, more power began to leach out of ShineGreymon. And it continued and continued, unknowingly forming an orb around it. As a white flame would burst, awakening inside, it would cover ShineGreymon. And little did everyone know that this was actually the power of evolution. As once the smoke clouds dissipated and the fires burnt the sands, causing a torrent of shadows, there it stood. ShineGreymon had transformed, and little did they know that this was its Ruin mode. As Ruin, as its codename would be, was actually a berserk Digimon with little to no control. However, only knowing pain and force, it was easy to control it. Now knowing that it was enraged completely and mad, it charged in at Alter S, seeing that Alter S must have been the thing that hurt it. And, believe it or not, with its blazing fire swords, it was able to knock back Alter S, as Alter S was actually shocked at how much power Ruin had, almost matching its own. As Alter S would be flung backwards, Chaos Gallantmon would decide that it's time for a counterattack themselves, as it would charge in with Gorgon, smashing into Alter S to deal more damage. And finally, both Dark Knightmon and Metal Greymon, who had recovered, decided to launch their own assault, almost as a payback to Alter S for hurting them. As Ruin would be floating above Imperialdramon, they were all shocked as the dark forces were able to turn the tables on Alter S. And, with Imperialdramon's words, it would tell the other three to deal with Alter S and to finish this. However, before the final blow could be struck, two slashes were heard. As the shockwave pushed back Chaos Gallantmon as it put up its shield, both Dark Knightmon and Metal Greymon were surprised as they were both hit and knocked to the ground. As both Lord Knightmon and Ulforce-Vidramon made their entrance to the battle. As it concluded in the last segment, Lord Knightmon had actually sought out allies after the network key was stolen from the Monarch Knight's castle. It sought out the allyship of the Winged Guardians and other groups that may be able to aid it. Unfortunately, the only one that was able to go with it at the time was Ulforce-Vidramon, as it had agreed to deal with Imperialdramon, knowing that Imperialdramon had once come from its area. As the Winged Guardians decided to join together with the Monarch Knights, forming one of the first major alliances of the digital world. As now, Alter S, seemingly who had no allies at all, suddenly had a team to work with, as both Lord Knightmon and Ulforce-Vidramon would assisted in battle, not even understanding that technically they did not have to do this, but they believed it was in their best interest, as now the dark forces were now once again having to deal with more problems. As deciding that it was best, Alter S returned to the sky in order to battle Ruin, realizing that Ruin possessed more power than any of the other Digimon around, at least up to this time, so it would be best if it dealt with it alone. Funny enough, Lord Knightmon engaged with Dark Knightmon, seeing that it wouldn't let it get away again, and that since it took the network key, it would deal with it now and retrieve it. In the case of Ulforce-Vidramon, Chaos Gallantmon decided to fight it, wanting to test its own strength. As Ulforce-Vidramon would say, this was interesting, as it would finally face a general, as Metal Greymon loomed in the back, wondering what it could do. However, as we zoom past to the wounded Imperialdramon, the Ebomon had finally arrived, as Imperialdramon had demanded to be healed. As Black Digitron was utilized to heal Imperialdramon, something strange happened. As electricity began to jolt around it, it was as if the Black Digitron that had usually worked in healing Imperialdramon had been resisting, as it began to hurt it. As the Ebomon backed off as Imperialdramon began to get angry, it would scream as to why isn't it working? And as it grabbed its head and began to shake vigorously, almost two voices in its head peered in, as it heard bluntly, "We aren't evil," as it began to shake vigorously, trying to gain control of its body again, as it kept on hearing, "We aren't evil." as it would scream to the remaining Ebomon, and now the Ebomon that had arrived, that it wanted more now, meaning more Black Digitron. However, this seemed dangerous, as too much Black Digitron can lose the mind of the user, as in the case of what happened with Ruin. It was infected with so much that it kind of tainted its soul and its mind. And as it did, Imperialdramon finally began to feel better, as it would laugh maniacally as it realized it was being healed, and it would yell that I am darkness, as an orb began to form around it. Unlike evolution, this was not an evolution. However, this was a purification almost, as once it finally dispersed and smoke appeared, Imperialdramon felt stronger than it ever has, most likely being a moderate boost for the Black Digitron, but more importantly, being able to control so much more, as now it would turn its positron laser into a laser saber. As feeling so good, it would say, I will destroy all. In its hyper-induced state, it would charge in, blowing past Darknightmon and even Chaos Gallantmon, to both of the general's surprise, as it would decide to take on both of these would-be knights that had come to fight. As first it targeted Lord Nightmon, as it believed that it would finally get a piece of it. As Lord Nightmon brought up its shield, the laser blade had almost pierced through the shield, causing massive damage as it pushed back Lord Nightmon. However, taking this opportunity, Ulfor's Veedramon readied its victory sword and prepared to, at least in its mind, dispatch Imperialdramon once and for all. However, this clash was little more than a nuisance, as Imperialdramon was easily able to see this and brought up its blade, forcing Ulfor's to block it. However, this was a surprise, as so much energy had been radiating off this attack. It forced it to have to fight back, and ultimately, with that much energy coming towards it, it was blown to the ground. As Lord Nightmon stood up, it realized that they had to get back up, otherwise they would be finished. However, to its surprise, Imperialdramon had looked down at Ulforce and laughed, as it knew it was once a Vmon itself. It was going to give it a warrior's death, as it charged up its positron laser, and at this range, it couldn't miss, as since it's now in its more powerful state, or revitalized state, Imperialdramon was ready to destroy it. As we moved back in to see what happens, the laser began to charge more and more. Although Lord Nightmon could put up a fight still, it wouldn't be enough to save both it and Ulforce. As Ulforce needed to recover, it laid on the ground, expecting its impending doom. However, as we zoomed back into the sky, the clash between Ruin and Alter S shook the foundation of the air. As both were so strong, it was clear that in order to stop Ruin altogether, it was needed that Alter S charge up one of its most powerful attacks, as the Great Cannon would need to be used, and at this point, it didn't matter if it had purified it, helped it, or destroyed it. It needed to stop Ruin. However, as it was able to notice on the ground of the situation, it would call out, "What?" as it needed to get down there and help its allies. Although not having any personal ties to these two Digimon, it could at least appreciate the fact that it too was once a warrior of the digital world, and before its service to Yggdrasil, it would do the same to stop evil. So seeing no other option, as Imperialdramon would yell, "Perish!" it dove into the battlefield as fast as it could, as its laser was almost fully charged. Both attacks met head-on, as Alter S was forced to use its Blitz Cannon once again, firing at full power, holding back the laser. As although it wasn't able to fully disseminate that much power to stop something like Ruin, this would be enough to at least hold back the laser. However, not taking it lightly that had been ignored, Ruin, who was in its berserk state, charged up its own attack, as this was a combination of multiple things. However, all that it knew was that it wanted to destroy Alter S, as that's what it believed was in its way. So it charged up an attack, one that was amazingly big, as lightning began to pursue in it, and an orb formed around it. It was filled with darkness and hate, as it prepared to destroy it. As it launched it downward, it would yell, "Die!" As this attack alone seemed to be too much for the others, as they were shocked as it came down towards Alteress. This would force Alteress to have to try to block it with its sword, and so it did. But little did it know that even Chaos Gallantmon would use its more powerful control of Ruin to charge more energy as the attack would press down, and unfortunately for Alteress, it would not be able to stop both. As Chaos Gallantmon was able to press just a little bit further, Ruin would force the attack down. And with the attack from Imperialdramon, they were not able to stand up to it. And unfortunately for Alteress, it took the brunt of the attack, as a massive explosion was felt across the battlefield. However, once the smoke cleared, they were surprised. Having survived, but been very damaged, riddled with cracks all over its body, Alteress stood there. However, the force of the attack was so great, the well of black Digitron that had been sitting under the desert area for so long finally began to bubble up. In an almost amazing state, it rose up to the earth like it was a volcano. As the black Digitron began to rise and rise and rise, as one of the secrets of the digital world in the desert area had been revealed, as the well of black Digitron had begun to appear. However, due to the fatigue and damage Alteress had suffered, it was unable to stand, and unfortunately for the hero, it plummeted and landed directly into the well. As the black Digitron began to envelop it, it sank deeper and deeper, as the black Digitron completely took it over, and little did they know, Alteress had faded into it. Feeling a new sense of high and energy, Imperialdramon would stand up and say that no one will stop me, as now it felt that the Dragon Emperor itself and its fist were now stronger than ever before. However, this was to be countered, as little did he know, something was coming, and it emerged. As out of the blue and the dark sands, they arrived. Leopardmon and Craniumon, two of the Digimon that Lord Nightmon had sought after for help. As more knights of royalty began to appear, they were here to aid and stop Imperialdramon once and for all. However, Imperialdramon himself did not look too worse for wear, as he prepared to dispatch them as well. However, in the net, as Omegamon began to appear through the digital net, and it was about to reappear in the world, it felt something. As if something had tugged at its heart. It felt that it had lost something. It was unsure of what it was, but a good feeling was not appearing. As Omegamon himself decided to appear to the digital world, as he had finally returned home, but he was on his way to deal with the threat. When conflict is created, it can eventually come back to its source. In the case of Imperialdramon and the Dark Forces, this has happened, as Alteress has only appeared to stop it after its rampage had gone too far. If we are to learn anything from these lessons from this part, is that understanding that we create most of our problems is almost apparent, as we could take inspiration from our own lives. Whether we're driving down the road too fast and we maybe get a ticket, at the end of the day, did we cause that, or was that something that just simply happened? When we have to take responsibility for the destruction or the actions that we cause, it can make us angry. But when we realize that others are simply here to stop us, do we choose to turn the cheek and decide that yes, we're responsible, or do we put it off and say that it doesn't matter, because what only matters is that being right is the case? As we look on and see the arrival of the remaining Knights of Royalty that have joined together in order to stop Imperialdramon, it looks like the foundation is already showing itself. So for those of you who are bigger buffs on Digimon, will kind of understand what's going to come in the next couple of parts. However, some things may shock you. And in the case of Omegamon and or Omnimon, as I'm referring it finally, it's sometimes hard to go between both names. There's a lesson there. Now the lesson that we'll learn be more explored in the next part. However, this is something that we all need to understand, is that loss is a part of life. And when it happens, sometimes we feel responsible, whether it is directly by our choices or simply just a happenstance of the situation. It isn't always right to feel guilty. However, it is right to acknowledge our own feelings. Now, this is Brad from the Ad Army, signing off. And for all of you out there, to sign on.